all things fall under the law of change. All of existence, all the conditioned paths are a dream, a waterfall, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, like dew and like a flash of lightning. The thing I decided, everybody, I don't know everybody, but lots of people were really depressed and probably still are about the election results. And so I thought, well, what do you do in such conditions? And I thought of a story. And in the middle of, I think towards the end of the Tang dynasty, there's a famous temple, and there's far up in the mountains. And there's a banging and banging on the door in the middle of the night. And somebody gets up and opens the little door inside the huge gate and says, "Yes." and it turns out it's somebody looking for shelter. And normally you wouldn't come in the middle of the night, but oh well. And so he comes in and then asks to speak to the abbot. And so he speaks to the abbot, and turns out he's there's an emperor just died, and there's a new emperor in, and the new emperor is like really pissed off with everybody and doesn't like everybody and thinks they're piles of garbage and things. And this guy is the next in line after him. So he has the obvious thought that his health is endangered. So he comes to the monastery and says, would you take me in? They probably won't look for me here. And so they take him in, and the abbot walks around and says to everybody, nobody saw anything last night, right? And somebody's just come in, but we'll call him Dragon Mind. Let's call him that, you know. And so they have this new monk called Dragon Mind, and he goes and he learns to be a monk, and dig in the fields, all these things he never learned as, you know, a royal family. So he's going, and he somehow starts to look happier. But every now and again, someone comes from the capital looking for him, and they say, "No, there's nobody like that here. Nothing to see here," you know, and they go away again. But somebody in the capital knows about it, because eventually the bad emperor dies, and they send for him to be the new emperor. And they speak to the abbot, and the abbot says, "Well, I don't know. We don't have such a person here, but if we did, I'll ask him." And so has, you know, holds the young person in and says, "Well, you know, they want you back now. They want you back at the capital." And he says, "Actually, I prefer to be here. I like the temple. I get to meditate. I don't have any of this awful politics and all that." So, and they talked about it for a while, and the abbot said, "Well, you might be more help if you're the emperor than if you're like a senior monk in our temple, you know." And so eventually he goes back and becomes a famous emperor, and naturally the monastery gets a few extra buildings and things like that. But I thought, well, you know, one of the things to do when you're waiting times out, you know, he became a monk, he joined a monastery. And that's really what we offer. We're a temple, and I don't know what we can do, but fuck it, we can do meditation, and we can do it together, you know. And it will keep peace in our own minds and hearts, and that's really the important thing. And then, whatever our actions are and responses are, that will be good. So so the Diamond Sutra came to me. We use this as a koan, but it's really just part of a Sutra, and it says, all things fall under the law of change. All of existence, all the conditioned paths, all the paths that depend on something, You're a human, whatever it is. All the conditioned paths are like a dream, a waterfall, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, like dew, like a flash of lightning. That's how you should contemplate it. And so I thought, well, somehow that's better than some other possibilities. So I thought today we would enjoy meditating together. So let's keep meditating. All things fall under the law of change. All of existence, all the conditioned paths are like a dream. A waterfall, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, like dew, and a flash of lightning. You should contemplate like this. So, feeling the time, as Du Fu said, Du Fu looked around. Du Fu fled the invaders, and then he went back to support the legitimate emperor, who was a patron of his. But the emperor by then had fled, and he was captured by the bandit emperor, and pinned up in the capital city, which in those days was called Chang'an, and it was right at the end of the Silk Road. And but there'd been warfare had come through, various bandits and things. So he wrote these famous lines: "The nation has perished, mountains and rivers remain." And spring grass grows over the city walls. Spring comes to the ruined city. And the other thing he said, feeling the time. That's something to do. Feel the time. So if you're disturbed, feel the time. What is it to be you? Which is really all you can ask anyway. What is it to be me? I noticed that I had lunch with Marie Howe, who's, I think, a wonderful poet, and is kind of a friend of ours, and we'd never met except online. So she was traveling through to Kauai for some writers' conference she was dubious about, but she decided to go because it was Kauai, and so I went down to meet her, and she was a very close friend of Tony Hoagland, who's also a good friend of mine, and she remembered this line of his where he said, "We'd do anything to get what we have." So I said, yeah, that's it. What we have, we already have it. We'd do anything to get what we have. And then I've been thinking about I've been reading Zagajewski, Adam Zagajewski, a Ukrainian poet, originally actually a Polish poet, and so many poets in that area, like Czesław Miłosz, he was born in a city that kept changing countries. It's like the city got up and walked from Russia to Lithuania to Poland. Actually, the countries just kept moving around. And so, I don't know, it's sort of, you can't even rely on your country being there. And so what I thought, anyway, as I said earlier, what I'm thinking is that my job, our job or my job is to hold a vessel for transformation. So if you want to be at peace, I applaud you going out and changing the world and all that sort of thing. And I've certainly done my share of those tasks. But what I love now is for us to have a temple and to have this. And it's a noble thing. And just by showing up and setting your mind at peace, you don't create more craziness in the world. So not creating more craziness is a fairly good idea. So, and also you get your heart to be at peace. My sister and the Australians are very, very upset about the election, all the Australians I know. My sister, who I always thought was way more conservative than I was incredibly hurt and upset. And how could the Americans vote for such a person and things like that? And I'm not sure the Australians haven't voted for such people in the past either. But anyway, so the people, and then one of our people said, well, who knows my sister, came on and said, well, I'm just trying to be at peace. And also, I'm just trying to be at peace. And then he gave the koan, what do we do when cold and heat visit us, and the heat burns us and the cold freezes us? And the teacher said, why don't you go where there's no cold or heat? Where is that? And he said, when it's hot, the heat kills you. When it's cold, the cold kills you. Just sort of a tantric view of it, just immerse yourself in what is destructive and painful. I like that all things fall under the law of change myself. And, oh yeah, right, I forgot. All things, for a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning. You can think like that. And so, and another Tony Hogan line, I'm not going to read the whole poem. The poem is kind of fun, and but it goes in a lot of different directions. But he said, but it starts with, don't take it personal, they said. But I did. I took it all quite personal. The breeze and the river and the color of the fields, the price of grapefruit and stamps, the wet hair of women in the rain, and I cursed what hurt me, and I praised what gave me joy, the most simple-minded of all possible responses. So that's Tony, so yeah. So, and it ends up with a dog. I was the dog chained in some fool's backyard, barking and barking, trying to convince everything else to take it personal too. So, Zagajewski is this another great poet from Middle Europe, who Polish, really, I think. And this was written for Joseph Brodsky, who was a exile from Russia, another great poet. And it's called Russia Comes into Poland. Through meadow and hedgerow, village and forest, cavalry's on the march, infantry's on the march, horses and cannons, old soldiers, young soldiers, children, wiry wolfhounds at full gallop, a blizzard of feathers, sleds, black mariahs, carriages, taxis, even the old cars called Moskvich came roaring in, and warships and rafts, and pontoon bridges roar in, and barges, steamships, canoes, some of which sink, barrage balloons, missiles, bombers, howitzer shells whistling arias from an opera. The shriek of flagellants and the growl of commands, songs slashing the air with notes made of steel. Yurts and tents break camp, ropes tighten, banners of dyed linen tremble overhead, messengers panting die as they run, cables rush out, candles burning with quick crimson flames. colonels dozing in carriages faster than light, popes piously murmuring blessings. Even the moon is along on that hard iron march, tanks, sabres, ropes, Katyusha shells whirring like comets, fifes and drums exploding the air, clubs crunching, the heaving decks of ferries and of invasion sigh, sway, the sons of the steppes on the march, Muslims, condemned prisoners, lovers of Byron, gamblers, the whole progeny of Asia, with Suvorov in the lead, limp in with a train of fawning courtiers who dance. The yellow Volga runs in, Siberian rivers chanting, camels pensively plod, bring the sands of the desert and humid mirages, the fold-eyed Kyrgyzes marching in step, the black pupils of the god of the Urals, and behind them schoolteachers and languages straggle, and behind them old manor houses skating like gliders, and German doctors with dressings and plasters, the wounded with their alabaster faces, regiments and divisions, cavalries, infantries on the march. Russia comes into Poland, tearing cobwebs, leaves, silk ribbons, ligaments and frontiers, breaking treaties, bridges, alliances, threads, ties, clotheslines with wet washing still waving, gates, arteries, bandages and conjunctions, future and hope. Russia comes in, marching into a hamlet in the Pilika, in the deep Mazovia forests, rending posters and parliaments, trampling roads, footbridges, paths, streams. Russia comes into the 18th century, into October, September, laughter and tears, into conscience, into the concentration of the student. The calm silence of the warm bricks of a wall comes into the fragrance of meadows, herbs, the tangled paths of the forest, trampling the pansy, the wild rose, hoofprints in the moss, tractor and tank prints in the soft moss. It overturns chimneys, tree trunks, palaces, turns off lights, makes great bonfires out in the formal garden, stains the clear spring, raises the library, church, town hall, flooding its scarlet banners through the air. Russia comes into my life. Russia comes into my thoughts. Russia comes into my poetry. So it's like he got a moving truck and put everything he could think about Russia in it. It's true. People were always worried about being invaded by Russia. So I guess there's one more poem, if I can find it here. This is Marie Howe, about her brother. The last time we had dinner together in a restaurant with white tablecloths, he leaned forward and took my two hands in his hands and said, "I'm going to die soon. I want you to know that." And I said, "I think I do know." And he said, "What surprises me is that you don't." And I said, "I do." And he said, "What?" And I said, "I know that you're going to die." And he said, "No, I mean, know that you are." So that was his concern going out, that she should have that freedom. All things fall under the law of change. So, I don't know, Tess, I think you're here. It looks like you're in a car in New York somehow, is my fantasy about where you are. But do you have anything you want to say?
You hear me okay?
Can. Very good.
Excellent. Yeah, the mobile temple is in Harlem today. I've actually seen sometimes in New York, sometimes they have a mobile rabbi. So I think we're from some version of that today. But,
The noble Roshi, right?
yeah, the incredibly satisfying subway, like right over my head. Which subway and meditation, who knew they would be such a good combo? But a couple of things to say, maybe. The first is I had an interesting encounter, not unlike that poem yesterday at the grocery store. I was kind of in a hurry and I was rushing through, picking up things and making sure I filled my list, and I was in line and I could feel the person in front of me just like reaching for my attention, like almost like a child, even though this person was far from a child. I could just feel this intense longing and demand that I would look up and sort of engage the encounter. And so eventually I, put everything away and just sort of made myself available. And this woman, who looked a little in rough shape, said, "I found the most wonderful new product today." And I said, "Well, what do you," and she showed me, she said, "Would you like to know what it is?" And I said, "Sure," And she showed me this box of pasta that was from sourdough. And she starts explaining to me that it's healthy and it's good and all these sorts of things. And then she said, "If I'm still alive the next time that I see you, I'll tell you if it was any good." And it was very clear that she was dead serious. Like I think she probably is in some very intense chemo process, and you could tell like she meant it. And I said, I just said, "Well, I look forward to it," or whatever. I didn't, it wasn't really a moment to go any deeper than that. And, we each went to our line and I saw her afterwards. And it stayed with me just kind of the whole rest of the night, and not for any other reason than just right in the midst of the grocery store, do you know you're going to die? This person might die tomorrow. And just the vividness of that, and also what I could feel was this intense loneliness and also this intense uncertainty of I have no idea what her life is like, or what's waiting at home or not, or what's led her here, or any. And the encounter didn't really yield any opening for that. So it was like that was just for me to kind of feel all of that. And the second thing I was thinking is sort of the reverse of what you were saying. Tony said about, we'd kill for what we already have, or we'd give everything for what we already have, which is almost like I heard this incredible rendition recently of the artist Laurie Anderson doing Waiting for the Barbarians with a symphony.
Wow.
And it's an incredible piece. Look it up if you get the chance. But this whole idea of we're just, well, we're not doing anything today because the barbarians are coming, and then we're wearing all these things and we're not passing laws, and we're, all these, everything's waiting for the barbarians. And the drums build and her voice builds and everything builds, and by the end, of course, the barbarians don't come, and somebody says something like, it's too bad, we could have really used those barbarians. And just the idea that we don't know we don't know anything about what's coming or what might be helpful or what we might need or how any of it's going to go. And this week I was asking a lot of people, because there are legitimate reasons to be afraid or be disturbed or be all those things. And I was asking people, what particularly for them. And the thing that was really apparent was that whatever they're afraid of is somehow already part of their lives. And I think part of what we're doing in this, if you're afraid of tyranny, where's the tyranny already in your mind or in your life? Or if you're afraid of exclusion, or you're afraid of whatever you're afraid of, that part of what we can do is work with those as inner forces. And the more we can do that, the more available we can be to whatever barbarians or not may come. So that's what I've been thinking about.
Very good. Well, thank you. Todd Geist, do you want to have anything you want to say?
Hello there. Everything falls under the law of changes, including apparently Jordan's beard seems to have vanished. it's been a kind of a hard, it's been a tough week for lots of reasons. Pretty tired, kind of out of it. I've been getting a lot of sleep. Last week I talked about my dog, and he's again having another issue, and so he was up all night, and was up with him. Um, his little heart's just beating. A part of the night, I did sleep a little bit, and I had some dreams with both of my dogs in it, and parts of my life where I was just with them, and they had it like Clark was sick and had to take care of him, but they had escaped into the surrounding. One scene, I was at school back at the university, and I was in a class, and I had taken the two dogs with me into the class, and they had run off, and I was frantically searching for them, and I knew Clark was Clark's heart was in trouble. And I kind of had several of those scenes that kept happening, and then kind of interesting thing happened. So I'm looking around for Clark, my stepfather, my mom's husband, Paul, who passed away a couple of years ago of a brain tumor, wandered out into this field, sort of disheveled, um, and he had his bong at near the end of his life. He liked to pretty much only thing he liked to do was get high, and so he wanted he walked into this field and on all these people like in a city park, and he was just going to sit down and get high, and then I went over and I collected him somehow, and just put my arms around him, and we walked out of the park together. And that's what I remember. Something about being together. Kind of reminds me a little of what I've been feeling this week when we go to the morning temple, and I get to see all of you there, and we come here, and I get to see all of you here. And like John said, we're building a vessel. And at times like this, when all this stuff is happening, it's so apparent that life is inconceivable, that you can't imagine what it might be. But having a vessel is nice.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Michelle Riddle, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, thank yous. I want to thank Jordan in particular today for the eloquence of your music. And for me, it spoke to something I felt like I wanted to say. It also relates to what Tess was saying about fear. So this election, going through what we've been going through, moving up to the election and with the election, really brought home to me how much the climate of fear that we're living in, whatever our particular fears are. And with that, my gratitude for the existence of practice and learning about turning towards what we're afraid of. But also how to hold the fact that there is fear, that there are things we're afraid of that maybe we don't understand, or maybe we think we know what they are, and just being interested and curious, and not wanting to get rid of what we're afraid of, or put it out of our minds, or tell a story that it's not there. We may or may not really know what it is. And so to me, what rises out of looking at that is a kind of love for all of us who know and feel fear. And that somehow makes it easier to turn towards it. And also then in our own life, like the Adam Zagajewski poem, or however you say his name, where he took everything about Russia, and just named it. We can do that the details of the things that are in our minds, just giving name to them sometimes is really helpful without saying what they are, So I wish I were more eloquent, but that's sort of what we have. Love and we have our lives, and I'm grateful.
And we're stuck with you. That's all we have. I wish it. I just love Tessa's woman who, if I'm still alive, I'll tell you more about the sourdough noodles. If I'm still alive next time I see you. That's kind of how it is, isn't it? If I'm still alive, If we're still alive, There's an old, I wanted to tell you a story about some of you know Jason Garner, who's a part of our world and is a promoter, rock promoter. And he used to do like got Coldplay and people like that, but he's moved on to his very involved with the Mexican world, and he's moved on to these big Mexican bands. And so everybody was very offended by the bad things being said about Mexicans, and so they got together and they got the cover of Rolling Stone actually, and to say a band called Manar and Fear. The lead singer and other people like that, and there's famous Mexican musicians saying you can't talk about Mexicans like that. And then after the election, he introduced them to Kamala and all those things. But after the election, they knew, like everybody knew, I knew as soon as I turned on the feeds, when we were doomed, and it wasn't like close. And so he flew to Mexico City to be with his friends because he thought they'd be feeling terrible. But they noticed, no, you're feeling terrible. We're from Mexico. We're used to this. We get this all the time. This is part of what feeds our music, So it was kind of he was very amused they were amused by him being worried about them when they were worried about him, which was a correct diagnosis. And so there we are. And I don't know. I mean, I think times are always difficult. They're always interesting. I'm worried about the critters, I'm worried about global warming and the animals and the trees and things myself. And Michael Katz, who's a friend of ours, and my agent said he was a friend of Gregory Bateson's, the great ecologist, and he said, well, what's going to happen to the world? And Bateson said, I don't care about the humans. I'm worried about the critters. We want them to survive. They've been very kind to us, And so I feed fox. I have a fox family. Somebody, do you have any family at home? Somebody asked me, and I said, oh yeah, the kids are away, things like that. Alison's daughter and my daughter far away. But then I forgot that I was thinking about the foxes. We have a whole family. They have kids and all that stuff. So yeah. So I think it's good to love, and I think we love what we can and who we can, and find out what we can do. And mainly, what can I do for you? It's not what can I do for me to make me better. It's what can I do for you. That's the thing, And I think it's it's a rather pleasant feeling when you notice that and you feel your heart opens. And I think, wow, that's really cool. What can I do for you? And so I don't know, but maybe that woman's going to tell Tess she's not dead. She's going to tell her about sourdough noodles in Brooklyn when she sees her next time. Or if she is dead, maybe she'll come in a dream and tell her, buy those noodles. So there we are. Okay, there's some other friends on here. I'd like to hear Tracy Godet. Are you up for speaking? Who's an old friend of mine, and a very old dear friend.
Very old, like so old.
No, I'm old. You're just of duration as a friend.
Oh, thanks, John. I'm having a hoarse throat. Sorry about that. But I haven't been I've been traveling for like 6 straight weeks, and finally I'm home on a Sunday. And I thought, what a good Sunday to be able to join this group again. So thank you for that. And you know what I have been struck by was the start of our time together. And I thought, when you said, John, the algorithm canceled out the bell,
Yeah.
and we love the bell, and the bell loves us. And I thought, oh my God, like that's the way I feel. Like society has this week, it feels, canceled out light, canceled out love, canceled out truth. And yet, just like that bell, it's somehow like this algorithm canceled it out. It's not gone, it's still there. But so there's something I'd love for you to reflect on that, because to me that was like this amazing metaphor from the universe. I mean, as many times as I've joined, that's never happened before. How fascinating, right? Like we couldn't hear a thing. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm just going to meditate. And then when you came on and said the algorithm has canceled out the bell, we love the bell loves us. And I just thought that's how society feels to me right now. But it's not canceled out. Like the love, the light, the truth is not canceled out, even though it feels as though it is.
Thank you. Excellent. The other thing was when Jason flew to Mexico City to talk to his friends, the musicians, and they said, oh, well, all the Latin vote went for Trump anyway, So it was like, and they're like, oh God, they worked so hard, they got the cover of Rolling Stone, all that stuff, but nope. And so the universe does what the universe does. All things fall under the law of change, and somehow to love this. Zagajewski has that wonderful line about try to praise the mutilated world. Yeah, it's really nice. And so there we are.
We are.
Here we are. The I don't know. Angela Rockel is here from the far south of Tasmania, and every time I think of you, Angela, I think of Tasmanian devils and wombats and cuckoos and birds. And weather. The far south of Tasmania is very strong on weather. So anyway, I'm just wanting to bring your voice in, and as an old friend and so on. So thank you. What do you say?
There's plenty of weather and plenty of critters here. In fact, I just got a series of photos from a trail camera of a friend who lives, a couple of kilometres away, of a Tasmanian devil with her young, very evident in her pouch, just walking past the back door, and then sitting down and grooming herself like a cat, licking a paw, licking an ear. Just the most wonderful image, because they're quite grumpy, as you know, both in demeanour and in looks. And yeah. And I guess I was just thinking that, yes, we need to be worried and do whatever we can, but the critters are a bit like the Mexican bands, What's the matter with you? It's
I'm licking my ear. I'm cleaning my ear. Right.
Yeah.
Good.
And I suppose what I've been aware of since the election, which, as you say, has seriously rattled a lot of people here with disbelief, is that my sense is of the whole world in macrocosm and microcosm, all of us kind of gonging, reverberating with what's happening, and a feeling of tremendous tenderness and vulnerability somehow that's actually it's somehow bringing us into that world of signlessness. We know that we don't know, in a moment like this. And my dreams have been full of getting lost at night and parking my car and not being able to find it again, and finding myself in a hotel where I thought I knew my way around, but actually all the staircases have changed and I can't get down to the ground floor, but full of children running, playing, having a great time on the staircases that I can't negotiate. In the night time, vanishing car park full of people going about their lives and somehow able to negotiate what's going on also. So just that really, and thinking about my grandmother, who's in the photo behind me actually, who she died when I was 3, so I didn't really know her, but one of her famous sayings was, "Oh, I'll see you on Sunday if I'm spared." so,
Thank you,
yeah,
Angela. Yeah,
that's that. Okay.
yeah. That's why I had a rather lovely dream, which was I dreamt I was holding a wedding, and it got paused halfway through the wedding, and there's beautiful young people with, the Hawaiian haku head lays and flower lays and things, and holding a wedding, and then there was a pause, and then my daughter Serafina came dashing in with 5 musicians, because the musicians were needed to complete the ceremony. And I think she was going to take over from me, maybe, and finish the ceremony. And so anyway, I was just thinking about the nature of love, and that's what's important. That also moves. The wedding seemed the right image, like to me, that's what the nature of love, and how much tenderness and kindness I feel, and good to be close to people you love, but it's good to love people you're not even close to, so that's what temples are for, So anyway, so I call up my daughter for another completely other reason, and she's, it's like 5 o'clock in Edinburgh or something, and she says, well, I can talk to you for a bit, but I'm preparing a meal. And I said, well, who for? She said, 5 musicians are coming to eat. And I said, oh, good. I knew that, sort of thing. And anyway, she's happily chopping away for the music she's putting. I said, do you know them? She said, no, they're just friends of friends. They're part of that international wandering friends that she has. So it was kind of nice. And I thought, that's it. Make a meal for the musicians that I dreamed of. So yeah. But I think the thing about the vulnerability and intensity of love is just the profound thing. That I do feel, I don't know, I just feel so, when I love, it's kind of an absolute thing. I think, oh, this must be why I came here. I don't mean to this screen, although that too, but to this, why I was born and why I grew and why we're talking together and so on. That feels that's all right. I can deal with that, so, and that vastness of the now, we're always in eternity because of now is here, and that's what love is. It's always here and it's always eternal. So all things fall under the law of change. A dream, a bubble, a waterfall, a flash of dew, a flash of lightning. All of those things in the closet, whatever it is that changes. All things fall under the law of change. They're the conditions under which we love and love each other. And it's kind of awesome, actually. And in the midst of that, that's where the vastness is. It's not anywhere else. Eternity is in the now.